Okay, this video is on proper form for a sumo deadlift. And as you can see, I have a split screen because I want to show the similarities and differences between a conventional, which is on your right, and a sumo, which is on your left. But having said that, I've already created a video on the conventional deadlift, which has a lot more detail than I'm going to go into with this video. So I would actually suggest that you look at that one so you can get more detail. But in any case, just so I can show similarities and differences to compare and contrast the two, let's first focus your attention down at the feet and the base of support. One major difference between a sumo and a conventional is that with a conventional, the base of support is much more narrow. It's typically either hip or shoulder width apart. And because of that, the arms are on the outside of the thighs. And on a sumo, your base of support is much wider. Your feet are rotated outward or rotated externally. And because of that, the arms are on the inside of the thigh. So that is one major difference between the two. Let's go ahead and get this into start position. As you can see on both of them, she is starting off by rolling the bar into her shin so that it's directly over the center of her foot. So that's a similarity. It's extremely important to do that. Notice also that her arm angle is slightly inward on both because her shoulder on both versions of the deadlift is over the bar. So that's another similarity. A difference is that with a conventional, her hips are higher in space and therefore there's more of a forward torso lean, and because of that, there's a lot more emphasis on the back in a conventional deadlift. Whereas in a sumo deadlift, the hips are typically dropped just a little bit lower in space. Because of that, there is less of a torso lean, and it's not quite as hard on the back as a conventional. Otherwise, they're very similar. The gaze is about the same. As you can see, the setup looks similar with the exception of the base of support and where the hips are. And so with having said that, let me go ahead and start this. And I'm going to show this one more time before it heads over to just the sumo for the rest of the video. So before I press play, I also want you to notice that on both versions, she is using her legs as the bar path on both the way up and the way down. So it's really important to do that so that the bar never travels away from the body. So I'm going to press play here and notice that her legs serve as the bar path. She stands tall and she sets it back down. Now we're switching over to just the sumo. For the most part, I'm just going to let this go and describe as she's going. So she rolls the bar into her shins. She relaxes for a second. She tightens back up, drives her feet down into the ground to stand back up. I will stop for just a second. And just as a reminder, prior to every single rep, you want to go through a checklist in your head. And the checklist should include that you want to inhale just prior to pulling. You want to brace your core. You want to push your butt back into space as opposed to sitting down into a squat so that you can seek out a stretch in your glutes and your proximal hamstring. And you also want to create what I call a backward C so that you're contracting the musculature of basically your spinal erectors or the musculature of your back to prepare your spine for the load it's getting ready to lift. And that's the checklist that you need to go through prior to every repetition, which is the reason why, in my opinion, you should pause for a second or two, go through that checklist. It helps you create stability. It helps to create safety. And it's also going to help you lift more weight because of those two things. So this is proper form on a sumo deadlift and a short comparison between the sumo and the conventional deadlift.